there's been a lot of debate right now with the Maple Leafs and how we're going to figure out this lovely NHL cap situation. And Maple Leaf fans are feeling somebody's going to have to go at this point in order to make the money happen. The predictions are saying the big contract is going to go to Austin Matthews. He is going to get that big money, maybe 15 million, which is kind of funny when you think about it because an average reliever in MLB and a free agent contract is going to get 15 million bucks. But a top NHL player is going to get 15 million. The money's have to go somewhere. And apparently, Little Willie is going to have to bite the bullet on this one. I don't know his nickname in the Nylander family, but is William Nylander going to survive this year as a Maple Leaf? Yes or no?
I think yes. I think that one of two things will happen here. And the third thing, which is a trade, excuse me, right now, won't. Um, as far as I can tell, it sounds like Nylander is in the 10.5 million range for 7 or 8 years, something like that. The Leafs are looking at maybe 8.5 or 9 for that same term. You know, when you're, a million here and a million there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. But $1 million to $1.5 million on a contract of that length is a pretty significant difference. I can't see them not playing with him here this year, and here's why. This team is set to sort of implode after this year. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Matthews? Everybody just seems to think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to sign. I don't think that. I don't think he won't sign, but unless they throw him $15 million a year, $14 million a year on a long-term deal, he can get that somewhere else, right? And he can go back closer to home if he wants to move closer to home. Tavares and Marner both come off after next season. You have basically the opportunity of, after this year, if you cannot make it work this year, you can blow the team up and basically start fresh. And I know people are rolling their eyes, but what have you accomplished so far? Not much. And so now, are you going to lock yourself into Matthews and Nylander for a combined $26 million a year, $25 million a year for the next 6, 7, 8 years, right? Plus Morgan Riley at $7.5 million a year for the next however many years. Or are you going to keep Willie Nylander and just see what happens and roll the dice on this year? Because is Nylander worth $10 million? Probably. Somebody else would pay him $10 million. Somebody else might give him 10.5. I mean, he's not a bum or anything like that. And he was the most effective guy of the big four in the playoffs. But at some point, look, I'm sure we might talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets later on. Aaron Rodgers took a bit of a pay cut so that they could sign Dalvin Cook. Lots of players do that. The guys that they have on the team right now don't seem to be inclined to do that. And while I can't really blame them for that, I can also say when the team blows up and you don't have enough money to go around, and all of a sudden now you have 2 or 3 guys making what the 4 guys were the year before or 2 years ago, that's an unsustainable model. And the model you have right now has not been very successful. So I almost feel like they're going to keep Nylander, and they're going to see what happens during the season. They can always, something could come up. They could sign him during the deal. They could trade him at the deadline if they wanted to. But I think they're going to roll with what they've got. This is a strong team. It's a very strong team that might blow up at the end of the year, next season, right? And then you have to decide what you're going to do. Do you basically just try to replace Nylander, and if Matthews doesn't sign, or do you give Matthews $14 million and now, Tavares comes off the books after next season and you can go out and get somebody else, but what do you do in the interim there? Is all that money now tied up in Matthews, Marner, and Nylander and Riley, and then you've got 15 David Comps to fill out and nothing against David Comp. I don't think he was worth $2.4 million a year for 4 years. That's a little extreme. But if you like David Comp and you know, what made me think of the Obama line, if you like your David Comp, you can keep your David Comp. And you will if you pay him that kind of money, right? But you're eventually going to get to a point where that's all you're going to have on your roster is those three guys and a bunch of other dudes that are third or fourth liners from other teams, right? But I think I think Nylander will stick around. Do I think something's going to get done in the next week or two? No, I just think there's too big of a gap. Unless they just sit down and go, you know what? We're going to do a short-term deal, 1 or 2 years at some bigger number. But I don't think Nylander wants to do that. Why would he? Right? Unless he really wanted to stay here. And if he really wanted to stay here, he would have got the deal done already.
Now, if we roll with the team the way it is, Toronto Maple Leafs in this upcoming season, and they play like they did in last year's regular season, they're one of the top teams, and they keep the team intact. Let's assume that Matthews is going to sign, Nylander doesn't. You're probably not trading with the deadline at that point, I'm going to guess, if you're rolling really, really well. So you're really risking here this season and walking away and getting nothing for him.
Right. The only way I would consider that I say the trade at the deadline thing because you can be as good as you want during the regular season, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. The Leafs have proved that over the last little while, right? But if it became obvious that there was no chance you were going to re-sign Nylander after the season was over with, and you could get two pieces for him that would help you as much as Nylander. And look, there's a lot of you could go get two $5 million guys that would be just as effective as William Nylander. I don't think so. I really don't believe that. And then my thinking has changed on that in the last little while. I think that if you're looking at trying to put together one season, the only way that trade works at the deadline is, say Riley gets hurt or something like that, and now you think we have maybe Nye steps up even further. You have somebody else who develops, or you are able to pick somebody up. Maybe Bertuzzi and Domi are even better than you think they're going to be. And now Nylander, while he's never going to be superfluous to your team, he's not really necessary. And now you can move him for a good defender and a pick or something like that, right? And you get something back and something that will help you in the short term also, right? Without having to have him walk away. But I really feel like this team is in a position where if you do deal Nylander now, people are going to be like, what the hell? Like, I mean, nobody's offering anything for him that's not futures, really. And futures are all well and good, especially considering how empty Dubas left the cupboard for the Leafs in terms of picks and things like that. But that first rounder and a third rounder or a first and a prospect don't mean a whole hell of a lot right now. And right now is what counts, especially, for an organization that has been really has not done what they should have done in the playoffs. And again, that's a bit of an overstatement too, because it's not like they lost to bums, right? I mean, these are good teams that they lost to, but they lost.
But they lost, and they ran into a hot goalie, and that's a story in the NHL. You run into a hot goalie, it's over.